Lovers of fine foods will notice the difference and experience great satisfaction when they sample the Belgian blue. The finesse of its fibers, its marbled texture, and the delicate flavor reveal the true value of this tender meat.
Easily digestible, with a good nutritional value, a high protein content, low fat acids and cholesterol content, this meat is very dietary and healthy.
Raising, buying, slaughtering, cutting, and selling high-quality meat, the continued success of the Belgian blue is assured.
Comparative cutting of a 1,430-pound bull calf.
Carcass weight, traditional, 858 pounds.
Belgian blue, 1,001 pounds.
Choice cuts, 31.5%.
Belgian blue, 45.1%.
Stewing cuts, 39.9%.
Belgian blue, 36.9%.
Fat, 13%.
Belgian blue, 6%.
Bone, 14.6%.
Belgian blue, 12%.
Comparison of meat yield depending on the type of conformation of a bull weighing 850 kilos or 1,430 pounds alive.
Carcass weight, traditional type, 858 pounds.
Belgian blue, 1,001 pounds.
Sellable meat, traditional, 620 pounds.
Belgian blue, 820 pounds.
Fat on carcass, traditional, 112 pounds.
Belgian blue, 59 pounds.
Bones, 125 pounds, traditional.
Belgian blue, 121 pounds.
We are now in the laboratories of the Institute of Farming Produce Techniques and Trade in Namur, in Belgium.
This carcass has been divided into fore and hindquarters by a horizontal section between the 7th and 8th ribs.
On the outer side, note the excellent development of the thigh and the loin area. On the inner side, the weak development of the abdominal cavity and the low amount of adipose tissue is striking.
First of all, the butcher draws up the flank's anatomical layout. Then he slowly removes the flank, starting with an incision at the cod fat, which he ends at the point of the hip bone by following the strip loin membrane. Notice the flank's limited volume, which reduces the proportion of cuts for stewing.
The butcher is performing the separating of the flank's different muscles. First of all, the skirt, a rather flat and rounded muscle located at the base of the flank. Next, the specialist butcher removes another muscle, the muscle forming the base of the flank, which is attached to the outside of the hip bone or ilium. Lastly, he removes the skirt, the muscle that separates the abdominal cavity. The value of most of these muscles is reasserted.
The skirt is used in the production of beef tartare, or minced beef, or beef burgers. The thin flank is classified as grade 2 steaks. The forequarter and hindquarter flanks are classified as meat for stews.
We are now observing the removal of the base of the fillet. He proceeds by making an incision at the pubic bulge on the inside of the hip bone or ilium. Subsequently, the rib eye is cut by a horizontal incision at the join of rump and sirloin.
The fillet. It is removed with great care since it is important to preserve the entire value of this first-grade muscle.
The three pieces that constitute the boneless ribeye are the strip loin, the fillet, and lastly, the entrecôte.
Now removal of the top side, an internal muscle. In English, we have only one name for all four muscles which form the top side. In French, they have separate names for each muscle. The butcher joints the top side. Then he removes the poire. Next, he separates the fausse araignée. He concludes his work by detaching the maquereau from the couvercle.
Together, these various sections form the top side, which comprises only first-grade cuts for roasting, grilling, and frying.
Next is the outside round, the salmon cut. Considering its larger fibers, this cut will first and foremost be valuable as a joint for roasting in the oven.
Here, the silver side is being removed. Its base covers the rump. These muscles can be fried, grilled, or roasted. On the right, the silver side. On the left, the extra rump.
Removal of the aiguillette, a muscle that covers the front part of the thick flank and is attached to the lower flank. When the aiguillette is peeled, it is excellent for roasting.
The butcher is presently going to remove the thick flank, that is, the muscle on the front of the leg, starting at the kneecap. At present, we shall see the trimming of the various muscles of the thick flank. He removes the inner muscle. This dissection enables him to obtain a better quality cut and increases the meat yield during cutting, thus limiting selling at a loss. Next, the butcher separates the remaining two muscles.
These cuts are good for roasting or frying. On the right, you see the inner muscle. In the middle, the obus, and on the left, the flat side.
The rump steak, a muscle located below the hip bone and forming the pelvis, is separated from the femur. Two small muscles, the gluteal muscles, are removed from the inside of the femur. These will be sold separately as meat for roasting, frying, and grilling.
The shin is removed in the same way. This piece is located on the inner side of the shank. Removal of the knuckle joint. This muscle contains the conjunctive tissue, which enables the free movement of the hind limb.
This muscle will be used in the production of minced meat.
Subsequently, the blade bone is parted by outlining the muscle membrane. This piece of meat is undergoing a complete dissection and cleaning. The end result is what we see here. At the top, first-grade steaks. At the bottom, diced stewing steak. These two categories of beef are highly esteemed for frying.
Parting of the shank and the femur. The beef shank is excellent meat for stews and soups.
Large first-grade cuts from the hindquarter, the entrecote, the strip loin, the top side, the thin flank, the aiguillette, the sirloin, the salmon cut, the obus, the rump steak, and the fillet. All of these muscles are graded as meat for roasting, grilling, and frying.
The cutting of the forequarter is divided into three parts. First of all, we cut off the brisket, the shoulder, and the échine. Naturally, the anatomical layout of the various muscles is taken into account. Nevertheless, this particular cut requires a very specific technique in order to guarantee maximum yield. As you can see, we end up at the lower part of the scapula.
The butcher removes the platysma, which is highly appreciated in meat dishes. Next, he removes the pectoralis major muscle. This muscle is very lean and voluminous. The pectoralis major is subsequently cut into pieces and categorized as second-grade meat for frying or grilling.
Top right, we see the front part of the dissected muscle.
An overall view of the different parts of the brisket. Notice the small proportion of meat for stewing from the breastbone and the forequarter flank.
The next step is to divide the échine from the shoulder with a horizontal cut of the scapula. The échine consists of the rib, the avant-cœur, and the chuck and blade.
After deboning, this cut will be jointed and some of the muscles will be regraded. Here we see the removal of the platysma, which will later be used in meat dishes.
Next comes the filet mignon, the cutting of the veine grasse, and finally the last piece for which even in French we have no name. When this piece is cut up, it will be categorized as meat for grilling or roasting.
Here the butcher is separating the entrecôte, a first-grade muscle, from the partie ovalisée. This partially trimmed, ovalized part is categorized as a roasting or frying muscle.
Apart from the entrecôte and the ovalized part, the various échine muscles are sold as meat for braising. On the bottom right, we see the main shoulder muscle. On top, the first flap, and on the left, the veine grasse.
Anatomical layout of the front quarter shoulder.
The first task is to remove the scapula from the internal part of the bone. Next, we separate the scapula from the back. And here we see this choice piece of meat for frying or grilling, dissected.
Still working on the shoulder, we now remove the feather muscle. When it is out, it is a choice piece of meat good for roasting or frying.
Removal of the blade bone for stewing. When this muscle has been cleaned, it's considered to be a choice piece of meat for frying.
Now the butcher removes the shoulder clod. Here we see this first-grade cut, trimmed and ready to be roasted or fried.
Removal of the shoulder of beef, or petit nerf. If it's marketed in this form, the shoulder of beef is a joint for braising. When it's portioned, it's sold as first-grade meat for frying or grilling.
Removal of the shoulder triangle. And next, removal of the blade bones. Depending on the size of their fibers, these muscles are sold as second-grade meat for frying or meat for braising.
Now, all the parts of the shoulder have been dissected. The various muscles are cleaned. On the right, you see the transformation pieces.